that. So I would, recommend that we withdraw it. And the problem is nobody's fault per se, but there are many lots held in common that are listed in the assessor's records as a single lot. A case in point is 81 Pleasant Street. That Mr. whatever it is, Maury or
Marty Corey.
Marty Corey has two lots. They're listed as one. Actually, the lot line goes right through his house, but be that as it may, he qualifies for an exemption under 8.3B, and we don't know how many of these are out there, but there are a lot. But
Well,
I mean, more than I would like to think. What?
I just want to say, let's not assume that any lot who's claiming they're going to be hurt by this would qualify. Marty Corey's lot would require quite a bit of research. 81 3 Diab Lane requires some research. There are going to be people impacted, yes, if this were to pass, but let's not assume everybody is going to get hurt by this.
I don't think we have a winning story.
We don't have enough
to tell at this
information.
point.
We don't have enough information on anybody's lot to make that.
And nobody, unless there's some good soul here on the conference call, nobody is going to go to the registry of deeds and look up lot after lot after lot, just on the off chance, or maybe more than an off chance, that these people have two lots that are exempt.
So,
I mean, I have two lots. I'm listed as one. I have, of course, no intention of subdividing at this point, or dividing or activating that, but they're all over the place, and nobody has got the time, I think, to go through the registry of deeds, deed by deed in this whole town. You'd have to look at 1,000 lots.
And I will say that, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Jen. I'd like to hear from the assessors as well, but I think probably, this exists to a fairly well. I think there are other ways to solve this.
And yeah, I did speak to the assessors, and they're the ones that helped me address and look at 81 Elm Street, and Rachel did pull the deed, and
Pleasant Street.
I keep doing that. Pleasant Street, and he does have a deed, and he does have two lots. And so, but that's what would be required for everyone that was identified. And that needs to be done to have our data be correct.
And
So
Tom's point is that we'd have to know the date of that deed, but make the presumption that most of these were done in the 30s and 20s, 30s, and 40s.
Well, I don't think we can presume anything, including the number of these that exist. The answer is that there are more than zero. And whether it's 100, whether it's a 25, don't know the answer. I'd love to promote Rachel, Mary, and Lisa just for a second here, if those guys don't mind. Just so everybody is crystal clear, what happens is that in the assessor's data, what is obscured from us right now is that if there is a developed lot, if there's a developed lot that is held in common ownership with an undeveloped parcel, like on 81 Pleasant Street, the two are combined and shown as one developed parcel. So 81 Pleasant Street is coded as 101, a residential developed lot. But what is obscured is the fact that there is a registered split of that lot in two. In the case of 81 Pleasant Street, the existing home problematically, sits right on the lot line between the two. So in order to develop the lots, what Mr. Corey didn't fully explain, and we know now, is that someone would have to raise the existing house and put up two separate new houses, versus this isn't a situation where the house is sitting on one lot and there's just a second parcel to the side. Like, it's sitting smack dab on both lots. And how many of those situations where you have the two parcels coded as 101 instead of having one parcel coded as 101 with the existing structure, and the second parcel, which is undeveloped per 8.3B. So
Katie, maybe you can answer this. How many developed lots are there, 101 in town?
So there's 2,400 now.
Okay, so my presumption is you'd have to start with 2,400 and whittle it down. I mean, nobody here has got that kind of time.
Well, again, that's why I would like, I'd love for Rachel or Mary from the assessor's office to comment. So Rachel, can we put you on the spot?
So Rachel doesn't have, I'm putting her back into attending. I've been trying to promote Mary, but I've been having trouble promoting her. So if I can't promote her, I can allow her to speak. She's the only one with, oh, here she comes. She's the only one with microphone and video capability in that office.
Great.
Oh, yeah.
Can I,
Plants, trees.
Jen, am I on?
Yep, you are.
Okay. I thought it was
Congratulations.
difficult. Okay, that was accurate. The properties that are on the map that appear as one parcel could be multiple parcels, not necessarily just two, could be more than two.
Yep.
Current use is a 101, a single family. We do these research projects frequently. We make sure that we would look up the deeds, we would look up the plan, make sure the plan was pre-1955. It's pretty frequent that we do it in our office. So to do the entire database, it would be quite an undertaking just to, verify all the second lots. I don't know that I would have the time to do that right now. But we could do it. It's something that we could research. And the hillside is loaded with lots like that.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mary. Maybe before we sort of get into the discussion of the 2,400 lots, actually, excuse me, I take that back. It's 2,200. So I'll save you 200.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, oh, great. We got 200 that we can put aside.
But from your experience, having researched this in the past, what are the areas of town that are likely to be prone to this as a occurrence? Hillside?
Definitely.
Anything else?
They're scattered throughout town.
but
The town is
can-
peppered with these lots.
Yeah, and that's.
Can I say something about that?
Yep.
Now that I know the dimensions of 81 Pleasant,
Hmm.
so presumably since it has a house on it, straddling both lots, 81 Pleasant has been in common ownership, probably for most of its existence, if not all of its existence. Okay, so therefore they can't benefit from 48 Section 6. Therefore, the only way they can't benefit from the second sentence because the 5-year rule has long since passed. Who's got background noise on this? Whoever's got background noise on, if they could stop. A lot like that, that's two 10,000 square foot lots, has a common ownership problem, so it doesn't get the benefit of the basic single lot exemption of 48 Section 6 because of the common ownership. It has to go under one of the common ownership exceptions, either in 48 Section 6, and that's a 5-year limit that's long gone for most everybody in Cohasset, or the exception that's in our bylaw, which is open-ended as to time, but has a minimum lot size requirement that's much greater. So, and it's greater than 10,000 square feet. So I
No,
don't
it
think
isn't, Tom.
It's
Isn't that an
not-
RA district?
It's RA, so it's 9,000. So it
9,000.
actually
Is it
does.
So they
RA?
both qualify.
Yes.
Okay, all right, fine. There are going to be places in town where they're not going to qualify because the lot size is bigger. And if I don't, is the whole hillside residence
Yeah.
A?
I think Mary's assessment of the whole hillside being a problem area is correct. I'll
All right,
share.
so then if it's in fact that they would be able to build today under our 8.3B exception, the Rourke v. Rothman case says that our repeal of 8.3B doesn't hurt them. That's what the case says.
Right.
Orleans had a similar bylaw. They had it from 54 to 71. They repealed it. The lot came out of common ownership the year before they repealed it. So it was buildable in 1970 under the Orleans local grandfathering exception. And 30 years after the fact, when Mr. Rothman comes along, he gets to build on it because the court's holding was that the protection of 48 Section 6 includes any town-granted added grandfathering rights. So anybody who has grandfathering rights under our 8.3B today is going to be protected. So that's why Yorkland says don't repeal it. I tend to disagree with that, but I think we should withdraw this article because I just think we should withdraw it because we don't know what the good part of our 8.3B is that it requires much larger lots than the state statute does. And that's a good thing because we don't want building on too small of a lot. So, you know, the Rourke v. Rothman case is making us stick with the bad part of 8.3B, which is the open-ended exception on a time basis. But I don't think we should throw out, as long as we're stuck with the bad part, we shouldn't throw out the good part. And the good part is that we do have a larger lot size requirement. And I'll mention here that I did in an email to Katie that, you know, I spoke to Paul Grady on Friday and he says, keep this article going forward, but put in a time limit, put in like the state law had a time limit. And that, but you know, I'm thinking about that and that's not a bad idea. It's basically to put a use it or lose it provision in this. But that needs thought, that needs research about whether if we put that kind of limitation in, how would it affect the people who are currently protected by the Rothman case. I'm not so sure it would hurt those people and would accomplish what we want to accomplish. So I'm all for withdrawing this at the moment.
Well, I think what you're suggesting is that if we did something like include a 5-year, similar to what is the existing protection under 40A Section 6 for common ownership, where it expires after 5 years, suggesting putting in an expiration of after 5 years from the special town meeting. The question is, would that change the calculation relative to Rourke v. Rothman? And that
No,
is
that's right. That's why, and that requires a lot more research than to just quickly amend it for this town meeting. And for Tuesday, you know, Wednesday night. I just don't think we should do it. Just leave it as it is, because okay, 81 Pleasant, if it's really in Residence A, they're protected by 8.3B. But there may be other places in town where they don't even have the protections of 8.3B right now, because they don't have the required minimum lot size. And it's a much larger lot size than, as I said, since state law. So I think we should just keep it the way it is for the moment and think through with more research and a legal opinion as to what a time limit would do if we were to impose one.
So I have one just observation and question, which is, one observation is that I did forward on Monday last, Rourke v. Rothman to Carolyn Murray for her consideration. We haven't gotten a final opinion back from her. I'm not disagreeing, Tom, that her analysis is going to be exactly what you've portrayed to the group. I am a little concerned that it wasn't flagged. If this was such a hurdle, the deletion of these grandfathered, of these additional protections getting swept up in 40A Section 6, the fact that it wasn't flagged with case law is a little bit concerning for me. So I want to hear Carolyn out on this. And as you're suggesting, if we were to add something like a 5-year provision, which gives people a chance to kind of use it or lose it, we need to do the legal analysis on that. I wanted to add in my thoughts also. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but Mary Quill has her hand raised and I'd be pertinent to this.
Mary?
I can wait till you're through, Katie, but I wanted to comment on what Tom said about repealing the bylaw. If you'd like to continue, I can wait.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, the thing that caught my attention was if they don't repeal it, and they put some kind, or whether they repeal it or not, if there's any kind of time limit on these lots, I think that is going to do exactly what you don't want it to do. It's going to get everybody to develop all those little lots in that time period. So
Well,
to,
I guess, Mary, I hear you that it's a potential accelerant to put in
Yes.
place that timeline. But on the other hand, it forces the hand of folks like Mr. Corey, who have a decision to make. Do you want to live in your existing home with a nice 20,000 square foot lot? Or do you want to monetize it and split it into two 10,000 square lots? Either move into a new home with one squish next to it. And there are many people like Woody and myself that would let the provision expire. And so I don't think we can sort of know without further research and understanding how many of these exist in the combined 101, 130 situation, and how many of them would be flipped for development or left to sort of expire during the 5-year time period, because I don't see Woody flipping it just because he can. And there are many residents that may feel the same in terms of, I like my large lot. I'm not here to monetize it. So I hear you that it can be an accelerant for developers and perhaps some citizens who are looking to do estate planning, but I don't think that is everybody, for sure.
I wouldn't say it's everybody either, but if,
Well,
go ahead, Tom.
Our 8.3D, again, it's an exception. It's an exception to the basic 40A Section 6 rule, which would allow a 5,000 square foot lot to be developed. If people qualify under 40A Section 6, end of story. But the people who then can't qualify under 40A Section 6 because of a common ownership in the lot's history, they have to take advantage of the exception. And our exception is at least requiring the minimum lot sizes we now require in each of those 3 districts. So I am less concerned that tiny lots will be developed. Tiny lots won't be developed under the exception.
Tom, could you explain this last point? I don't see how you revert to the present bylaw size. What you do is you are protected as of the date of registration.
But the bylaw qualifies it that you must have a minimum. It says if you're caught under 48 Section 6 because of common ownership and not qualifying,
Right.
a change in zoning dimension, you will get to develop regardless of the common ownership, but you have to have a minimum size of 15, 35 and whatever.
No, you don't. You have to have a minimum size of 9,000, 15,000 and
What is
20,000.
it?
That's what it
I'm
says.
sorry, I don't have the bylaw right in front of me. as
Well,
to
that's
where
what it says, 9,000 in an 18,000 foot district. It says 15,000 in a 35,000 square
Okay,
foot district.
all right,
So these are less than half. Well, one is
Okay.
half,
all
the other
right,
2 are less than half.
all right. So smaller lots will get developed, but bigger than what the state law would allow. Remember, the state law, if people qualify, will be a 5,000 square foot lot,
Well, the state law doesn't allow you to have common ownership, basically.
which is going to catch a lot of people in Cohasset. Which is
But
why
it doesn't matter because we have a bylaw that over. Look, I think there are other ways to solve it. What would be offensive? Let's just fast forward on 81 Pleasant Street. Corey sells it to somebody who raises the house and puts 2 houses on a 10,000 foot lot. So now there are 2 houses where there once was one. It's a 10,000 square foot lot. Lot coverage is 25%. So the footprint of that house has to be either 2,500 square feet or less. Add a couple stories or 1 story or 2 stories.
Or
And you're
3.
talking about a 5,000 to 6,000 or 7,000 square foot house on a 10,000 foot lot that is legal. Now, I think this is what.
Sounds like Pleasant
that's-
Street.
What?
So it sounds like Pleasant Street.
It sure
the
does
new-
sound like Pleasant
For the
Street.
new Pleasant Street.
The new
Well, or-
Is
Pleasant.
that what
It's
happened
been
in
developed
my
in the
neighborhood?
last 5 years along these lines largely. So I think that's what offends citizens, if you will. And I think there are other ways to skin a cat. One might be to take a look at setbacks that Tom and Steve Bjorklund talked about. Another could deal with or add to that lot coverage. 25% lot coverage is for a dwelling is ridiculous in my estimation. You can do the math in any district. and so on and so forth. There may be FARs that we should be thinking about seriously, because it's massing on small lots. And the 25% lot coverage doesn't get us there, and setbacks don't get us there.
Well, I really object to taking Bjorklund's suggestions.
No, I think his point is valid, Katie.
But
Yeah.
I think we've already researched this and come up with the conclusions on our own that we were looking at the table of area dimensions. So I guess my objection is that Bjorklund is bringing the idea to the group. I mean, we have been discussing for a long time.
Well, I know, but he suggested that. I don't think there's any harm in anybody suggesting something. I don't care who it is, if it's a valid idea, but I think setbacks are not the only, setbacks alone are not enough. But there are other tools in our quiver, if you will, that I think we could apply, not by December, but by next May or subsequently,
Yeah.
that might deal with massing.
If it
Right,
makes
Yes,
you
Jan.
feel,
And the proposed table of area regulations and the proposed, the redraft that I wrote does that. We're attacking lots of other dimensional things that are going to reduce the bulk of houses. Again, I wouldn't take offense to what Steve says, because it is one of the things we're already thinking of doing.
Okay. Well,
it's not-
I mean, to be honest,
I get your point, but like, I will tell everybody in this group, he's a tough guy to deal with. He's tough, and he has an interest and an objective. He said to me, he doesn't own any of these lots who would be affected by this. But, he also happens to be extremely knowledgeable about this and has been very successful in his legal challenges to various towns around us.
no,
on this.
I understand that, but my point was twofold. One is his intent was to embarrass the zoning bylaw working group,
That's
which
true.
is confusing and inappropriate in terms of trying to have a conversation with community members. And my
That is
second
true.
objection is that he portrayed us as not having further considered some of these aspects, and we have. And so, again, when we're trying to talk to the community and have a community conversation so that they understand the work of the zoning bylaw working group and the quality of what we've done, and the fact that we're coming at this not from just our personal preferences, but rather from what we're hearing from at least a significant portion of the community in the master plan. I think, Woody, you nailed it. And this is what I was going to say, is that the underlying land use issue of undersized lots being redeveloped or developed with oversized homes is kind of the issue. Now, we were trying to attack it from a two-prong approach, and that two-prong approach was first dealing with the non-conforming undersized lots in 8.3b and 8.3c. And the second was attacking it through the table of area regulations dimensions. And we have done, as you guys all know, incredible amounts. I mean, just loads and loads of research as it relates to what that might look like. Setbacks and lot coverage are certainly valid recommendations. But when we presented to the planning board and when we followed up discussions with ourselves, it was really FAR that gives us the most precise ability to regulate this issue of massing. And that's just sort of where we were as a group. So just to be on the record in terms of my recommendation is to withdraw for further research. I also think it allows us to give more notice to the public that this is going to be an ongoing conversation with the zoning bylaw working group, and know that they should be paying attention and inputting into the process. Hopefully, we can also tie it into some public forums if we can get the funding at special town meeting for the more comprehensive zoning redraft to augment our work. And then last but not least, I think that where I'm at is that I want to understand if we were to modify 8.3b and have some kind of time provision, or Woody actually mentioned to me this concept of, could you modify it so that only lots that are held in common ownership of 3 or more are impacted, and leave the cases of the 2 alone? Again, this goes back to how many 2 versus how many 3 versus how many 4 are out there in that 2,200 population. But I think that I want to research more of the lots. I want to understand the legal calculus of, is there something we can do different than just deletion that helps us create new case law as it relates to Rourke v. Rothman. And I think it just further underscores the fact that we should be talking to the planning board on Wednesday about the urgent need to address the underlying land use issue that we can come at through deleting non-conforming lots, but we can also come at it from the perspective of the table of area regulations. So that's where I stand. What I was going to suggest to the group after we get through everybody's comments on this, because I do want to hear from Paul and I do want to hear from Peter and Cassie, is that we write up a specific statement that we could read back to the planning board on Wednesday. So let's get through.
Jen has had her hand up for quite a while. I think
Okay, Jen.
we should hear from her first.
Yep. Okay.
So I have a few prongs, just that I agree with everybody who has spoken thus far that it should be, brought back for more research. So just sent back to us and not tabled. That by stating that and having a general announcement that this is not going away, we're looking at everything, and that we have been looking at everything. And I think from day one, we were saying the way to access the massing was through the table of area regulations, and particularly for these very tiny lots where the massing, that we put a restriction on those tiny lots. John, Hallen, and I have talked about that in the past, right up to last week. So, Steve is Steve, but this was on our table on our agenda for the last year. So, it's who he is. But I also wanted to mention, I think the really important bylaws to get through are the other two. I think that those definitions are really key to helping John and the department do their jobs. And it's a great step in the right direction for the other items that we're looking at future public hearings with the shared driveway and the common driveway. Then I just want to let you know that Mary Quill has her hand up, and I wanted to read a comment in the chat from Lisa Legg, which is speaking as a resident. A great point made by Jeff DeLisi last week was regarding the value of these lots to the owners. Many people did purchase these lots as an investment. Who were we as a town to put a time limit when they can and should cash in their investments? Lots developed under single lot exemption yearly are very low in number, around 3 or so. More of a threat are owners who hold large acreage that is potentially subdividable. And then I didn't know if you wanted to just grab Mary.
Yeah, I'm happy to promote Mary, and then I really do want to get to Cassie, Paul, and
Sure.
Peter.
Mary, do you want to speak?
Well, I just wanted to make a couple of comments. So the development on Pleasant with all the small lots, that a lot of those owners are the Asian population, and they are owners, and that is their investment. And for them to cash in on what lots are selling for right now, that's probably part of their estate planning, is to cash in on those lots. Just as a point of interest. And those lots that are being sold to, maybe Corey's house gets sold to a developer and he does level it. Well, those are the entry level purchasers for Cohasset.
I object to that. I object to that statement that they're entry level. Entry level is not $1 million+ dollars. It just doesn't exist in Cohasset. So
they're not all $1 million+ either.
They
buy those lots. That's the only way they can get into Cohasset.
Well, we can have
All right,
this.
well, let's
That's
not
my
argue
opinion,
with
Katie. That's
Mary.
just my opinion.
That's
Just
fine.
Been here
hear her
for
out.
18 years and I see the single lot development exemption. So point taken.
$1 million is not, and anyway. And so just to be clear, just to respond to Lisa, and I hear your point, and that is not the intent of the group, is to deprive people of their livelihood or their retirement, but it really is trying to address the land use issue that there is an equal number of people that feel passionate about, but 3 out of 20 or 3 out of 25 is 12 to 15% of our new homes, new construction each year are single lot exemption. That's not nothing. So I hear you that 3 sounds small, but when you start putting it on a percentage basis in terms of new homes, new construction, it starts to get a little bit more meaningful. And if you flash forward that in the future, it will continue to impact us in terms of non-conforming lot sizes being developed. All right, so with that, I'm going to send it to Cassie for your comments.
I don't really have much besides I know that there are some people from the public. So I do want to say that all the comments and feedback from the town, I know that Katie and the team have really taken an interest and they do care about kind of what happens to this. So I think that withdrawing so that we can do further research is extremely important. And so I totally agree with that. And I do believe in kind of thinking through a sunset provision. I think that that's extremely appropriate. And I think that that's a way for us to understand the impact on some of these legacy owners. And we have done a lot of the work of an FAR sensitivity, which basically would, allow for a certain density based on the size of your lot. So I think that we've done a lot of that work. So perhaps an amendment to 8.3 point B would actually be interesting if thinking of an FAR density analysis for just those specific lots. So just something to think about because we have done a lot of that research to date.
Okay.
Yeah, good point.
So Paul Cleary, I know you had concerns about this, so perhaps some of your concerns are being echoed.
Sorry, I'm just in my office. So yeah, no, I don't have much more to add. I kind of put it out there a couple of weeks ago, and that's why I abstained from voting on this one, just because I knew that there was some more deeper issues that needed to be thoroughly investigated so that everyone understood the implications of this particular vote and change. So other than that, I don't have anything else to add. I think Cassie brings up that good point that a lot of work has been done in terms of the FAR. And if that was to get, incorporated, it might put some of those appropriate restrictions on undersized lots. So that's all I have to add. Thank you. And I have a doctor's appointment, so if I leave early, that's why.
Okay, thanks, Paul. So Peter, you've been waiting patiently.
Yeah, I think that unless we have a unanimous vote in favor by the planning board, this is dead at town meeting. Any land use change without the total support of the planning board is going to be a lame duck. I fully support, just deferring it to annual town meeting, but I think we ought to make a positive statement about why we're doing this change. And that would be that the use of this single lot exemption has allowed massing to happen, abusive. I would use the word abusive as well. Abusive massing to occur on these undersized lots as a method, as an investment tool. And it wasn't the intent, 50 years ago for this thing. It was we were a very small town 50 years ago. And this was, one of the covenants put in then to help locals keep their property and for future use. But it's out of date. It should be changed. It has to be changed. And we should definitely make sure they understand why we're doing it and that we are coming back with an improved bill or an updated recommendation. And I think there should be some nod to the home, to the landowners to give them some sort of a trapdoor, whether that is to allow them a little more, like a 5-year extension at the point of town meeting approving this, maybe, crafting the area, creating some sort of an area table specifically for people who are caught in this situation, something that allows them to maybe do some development that isn't massing in smaller house on a smaller lot kind of thing. That's probably very complicated, but it feels like we have to allow some sort of a remedy for these folks who it's an emotional issue for people, and that will resonate at town meeting. So I think we need to, I agree, we need to defer it to annual. We need to look at the options and allow some relief somehow I'm not sure what that is exactly, but some equitable relief that isn't allowing this thing to go on in perpetuity. It should be stopped. You know, it's really an exception that is out of date. That's all.
Right. Well, I think we have consensus to withdraw and refer back to the working group. How do folks feel about my suggestion of someone drafting a statement to be read with that recommendation for Wednesday? I think a lot of the comments made by the working group and by Mary and Lisa should be incorporated into that thought process. But I think it would be helpful for us to have kind of a written statement that we could read into the record. Without anybody's objection, I'm going to recommend Woody that you take on this task.
Thanks for volunteering, Wood.
Exactly.
And I love you too, Katie.
That's a motion.
Sorry.
What happened?
You're too good. I just also, I think this, for me personally, sort of underscores what we've been talking about for a while, which is part of the reason that we want to get a consultant on board to help us, is to get to some of these public forums where we can kind of tease out public opinion on some of this, because we have public opinion and comment from the master plan. But when it comes to specific remedies, that's another consideration as to how you address it under land use. So, you know, for me personally, I think that's one of the things that I would like to take as kind of spurring that. But I would also say that I feel really strongly that we're facing a split community on this, because for as many people that feel as adamantly as Lisa does, there are equal number that feel really concerned about what's happened on Windy Hill, or what's going to happen potentially on Diab, in terms of the size of the homes that are being put in on these 8.3 and 8.3 B and C lots. They weren't there on Wednesday, but they are out there, and they are out there in numbers. The only other final question I have for everyone is the following. We have 8.3B, which we've discussed in ad nauseum right now. 8.3C is a slightly separate beast. I don't know if people feel differently, Tom or Woody, but 8.3C is subdivision lots that have gone undeveloped. Now, they have resold in many cases to developers and perhaps individuals, but that was a different beast. It wasn't.
Well, it was different, but it's even more of a blanket exemption. It exempts subdivisions indefinitely or in perpetuity.
Right.
Or it exempts subdivision conditions in perpetuity, as long as it was in conformity with area width and frontage provisions of the zoning bylaws, if they were even in effect. If they weren't, then there are no restrictions. So I think this is actually a little bit worse than B, but who knows? Who cares? You know, let me just say that I think that, and maybe it's because I'm an optimist at heart, but usually out of these situations, something better emerges as opposed to something halfway. And I think that dealing with ownership rights per se is not tackling the fundamental issue. The fundamental issue is massing, which is why I think FARs and other things, you know, if I could go back in time 6 months or 8 months earlier, that's where I would have been focused anyway, on reducing massing, which also doesn't run us as much afoul of this these single lot exemptions. So I think out of this might come something more appropriate for the town and easier, both legally and easier probably to administer.
Music to Tom's ears. I could see it.
Well, I guess where I'm at, Woody, is that
I'm just saying.
No, I hear you. Massing has a numerator and a denominator. right? And the denominator is the lot size and the numerator is
Yeah.
So again, our approach was looking at land use and zoning changes that could address the numerator and the denominator. And the denominator was single lot exemption. So I just want to be clear as to why we took it.
Yeah, we may have a slightly different point of view on that. I think the issue is massing, and I don't really care who owns what. If the smaller the lot, the smaller the house.
Yeah, that's kind of the concept I was trying to get through,
Okay. All right.
As the trap door for these people, as.
It doesn't take it. Yeah, it doesn't take their ownership rights away or their use
Right,
rights
but
away.
but it limits
still
what they
use
can
it.
do. Yeah, it changes, puts restrictions on what they can do.
Right. And that's fairly
think that-
common in other zoning bylaw areas
I
where,
would think so. I mean, I haven't looked at it, but I would think that would be a solution.
So there's massing, and then there's the comment that's, again, I just want to keep us true, and I don't mean to, but part of the comment, there were two comments, and we highlighted them in the presentation that were land use issues. One was relative to massing and appropriateness with the neighborhoods, but the first was Cohasset feels overcrowded. So it was a total number of housing. So again, just to refresh our memory, we were trying to deal with two land use issues. One is massing, and the second is the sense of overcrowding. We are not going to be addressing the sense of overcrowding. So just full stop. And I think there are individuals out there that are very concerned about the sense of overcrowding. And that's fine, but I guess they need to show up. And that's why I'm recommending public forums. Because I can't fight, or we cannot sort of fight the battles if people aren't willing to show up and have that concern expressed. But I think the Windy Hill residents, and I know the Howe Road residents it's about massing, but it's also about, good God, like, how many more houses are going to be put on our non-subdivision size private way? With Amazon trucks and all this. So like, again, as I said, there's two issues here. We're suggesting that we consolidate it down for annual town meeting to the massing issue. But I think that just so we're super clear, we're not addressing the first one, which is the number of houses and the overcrowding of Cohasset with housing. And I don't truly believe that that's going to be affordable housing. You can't convince me.
You're absolutely right there.
$5,000 that it's going to be affordable housing when it gets built.
It's not going to happen in Cohasset, no.
No. And so like that argument was specious to me when presented by some folks at the public hearing. So
it may be, and I think it is starting to turn out this way, that even if we were to eliminate 8.3b, its exemptions would continue on to the 22nd century.
Yep.
There's nothing we can do about exemptions already granted, so we shouldn't, in my estimation, worry too much. If it's neighborhood overcrowding, I think we're going to have to think creatively about some other way, and perhaps beyond massing, perhaps beyond FARs. I don't know, but
Okay, I just have 2 points. I think about that affordability comment, and I do think that there's probably some intrinsic value to scale. So if there is some type of FAR applied, I think just with construction pricing, the smaller the home, the more lowercase affordable it will be, especially if someone's selling their larger home and then building a smaller home that's based on that FAR. So there probably is some intrinsic value. We'd have to kind of think through it. And I also think that it'd be extremely important for the next public forum is that we just need people to show up who are from Windy Hill and Howe Road to speak on that behalf, because we received a lot of public comment on the other side of things, and people are upset about this, but we do need some feedback on the other side of things.
Yeah, and they have showed up the planning board before. And the planning board is fully aware of those people that are concerned about massing. I mean, it's a conversation that the planning board has, with large home reviews, and it's been having with as
it relates to our article, I know that.
No, I understand
a lot. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I think we have a plan of action here in terms of withdrawal, referral back to our working group. Woody, I'm happy to draft it,
Oh,
but
I'll put something down, but it's going to require some wordsmithing by more than one person, I think.
okay. All right. So we'll do that on Wednesday. And does anybody else want to take the lead in terms of bringing this forward to the planning board? I'm happy to, and I'm happy to continue to be the face, but if there's anybody else that thinks they want to take a run at it.
Well, I'll have the statement that Woody and others may help draft. I don't mind taking the lead, and I can take the crap from the Bjorklunds and Delices of the world. I don't want to see you get beat up.
Am I missing something? What's the point here?
No, my only point
Who's
is
going
like.
to present at the planning board?
Who's going to present?
Who's going to present it, and is there value in keeping my voice as continuity, or is there value in bringing in a different voice? That was my only question. I honestly am happy to do it. I've got a thick skin.
It's up to you.
That doesn't bother.
Tom, while you're a member of the planning board, how can you be the advocate for something else? For
Sure.
something there?
Why not? I'm on the subcommittee that's, it's, yes. The answer is yes, but it's up to Katie. It's whatever she feels comfortable with.
Katie, I think it would just look good and consistent with the public and all the comments that were made, letting everyone know we considered all things and we're continuing to do some research. And, I think you might be the best person to present.
I
Okay.
agree.
Well, I think the comment has to be stronger than that. I think it has to say that we still think that this is something that needs to be changed. And we need to just work on it a little more, but we'll be back at the annual town meeting.
Yeah,
No, agreed.
think-
And I
we're
think
going to-
usage-
think
The
Woody would
historic
be a
usage
little
has
more
been
articulate.
abusive.
Okay.
we're
That's
going to
fine.
have the statement that Woody drafts to possibly, if it's short enough, just read it. That'll be our statement.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Well, I'm
just
happy to.
take it off the table and let's move on to the next thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Done. Let's move on to zoning working group. Let's do an easy one for a second. Zoning working group 3, ledge protection. Give ourselves a little mental break. My mental recap of the conversation was there was one comment made by Clark around whether we could include in the language related to special permit, the special permit process for exposed ledge for structures, that there would be specific relief if they're in exchange for ledge protection, largely in the setback areas. My take on the final conversation is that
I don't understand how he practically sees that working. What am I'm going to give somebody lesser of a setback for their house because they protect more ledge? Is that how it's going to work?
Sounds like that, Tom.
That's the theory, but I agree with you is how do you quantify that? How do you make that a standard,
And what if I had no intention at all of removing any of the ledge, but I talked about it and
and
then I
so
get
I
zoning
think-
relief?
Yeah,
I mean,
so
I don't
think
see
it's
this
zoning.
at all.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you get the neighbors involved with the setbacks.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and the exceptions up the gazoo. Oh,
Right.
Yeah.
I think Tom or Paul Grady made the comment of just the less direct you are, the greater problems it is. It's nice to be direct and see how it goes.
Yeah, I think that's a slippery slope.
Yeah, Woody makes a great point because somebody might not propose anything.
Right.
And then if somebody did propose to like put a tennis court or swimming pool and remove ledge, we can't trade off a lesser setback. We can't. That ends up being something that needs a variance or it and
yeah.
it gets into the thing that my board still thinks we can grant waivers.
I think that
can't grant
idea
waivers
should
to
be
anything.
politely dismissed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I also think, to be candid, I think we have the votes for, I actually think we probably have unanimous votes for keeping it as proposed language.
I don't think he's going to the mat on that. Spoke to him about it on Friday. I don't think he's going to go to the mat. So
Okay, good, good.
So
Thanks,
on,
Tom.
so zoning working group 3, we heard the comments. We are keeping the language as is. We believe that the suggestion that was put forth in terms of a variance or zoning relief in the setback is not only complicated because that is actually in the purview of the ZBA, not the planning board as a special permit authority, but as Paul Grady, I think, pointed out, it has the unfortunate impact of further impacting the neighbors than just requiring a special permit process with no relief. So I'm very comfortable with keeping the language as is and moving forward with it. And I think that we'll be successful with this. But we have obviously to go to advisory and select board and then town meeting. But so I think that's an easy one to move forward on. Last but not least is zoning working group 2. So zoning working group 2, I think I had to recap like 3 times what the changes were, but just to refresh our memory on a Monday. Clark wanted in the title to the article, he wanted the word residential struck from the title. He wanted in the first 4 paragraphs for lot, frontage, street, and way, that a red line be done to the existing language, which is easy enough to do, so that people are clear as to what the proposed and what the existing is. Then in 3, he wanted a specific reference to the common driveway standard, which I think we already have. But then he wanted that reference also duplicated in qualified ways as future regulation.
I think in all of these definitions,
Yeah.
you should perhaps at the end of it just say, see also, because this is common in the redraft because we're moving so much out of the existing things into regulations in the redraft.
Mhm.
Is see also applicable regulations of the planning board. And I wouldn't name them because who knows what we name them, we can change them from time to time, just say applicable
Exactly.
regulations.
Good point.
If you put that on every, every definition, at least where we know we have a regulation or will have a regulation such as access. That, and I talked to him again on Thursday, Friday at length about this. I said, you just haven't seen it yet, but there is going to be a standard that the planning board will apply. We will have definitive measurements of how each of the 2 non-subdivision types of access are done. John will be able to refer to that, and then that will be the standard, where he was concerned about the planning board going off on some crazy tangent. So just make a simple sentence at the end of each definition where it's appropriate to say, see applicable planning board regulation.
And I think that would go on street, way, it would go on common driveway, it would go on way, qualified.
Yep. Yeah.
And then adequate access.
Yep.
Okay.
If that's in there, again, I've hammered that point to him in our private conversation. I tried to last Wednesday. I'll hammer it into him again that, we will have standards. We're not going to be picking things out of thin air. That's the whole point of this whole
Right, but the
exercise.
danger, as you point out, Tom, is that we also don't want those standards, the metrics in the bylaws, because
Right.
then we can't change them.
Correct.
They're regulations, they're board
Right.
control.
Right, but Clark was making the point like he didn't know what the planning board would be applying. Well, Clark.
Well, he's got to vote when the time comes.
Well, we have regulations on at least one of the subjects, and we are going to have regulations on
Sure.
more. And that's the whole point of this whole exercise. With respect to the bylaw versus regulation thing, the reason the number 3 on the common driveway, the 3-lot limit, was put into the definition was to make that difficult to change in the future. However,
Right.
I am agreeable if it's just set forth in the regulation and not in the definition, if that will make Clark happy.
I think if we strike that language that says and serving no more than 3 contiguous lots, we will get his vote.
Yeah. And then we'll fight,
We'll
Make-
put
make
the,
sure
we'll
that's
put the
included
free
in the
lot
reg-
limit in the rules and regulations.
correct.
Correct.
Yeah, if you can get the board to pass it.
Well,
I
yeah,
think
I mean,
I
yeah.
think the only person I heard expressing that 3 was too small was Clark.
I guess
Okay.
I'd rather have the definition.
Well, that's a good way to approach it then.
Yeah, it gets it through special town meeting, hopefully with unanimous vote to your point, Peter, that we need.
Yeah, you've got to, on land use, you've got to have the board totally behind you.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I 100% agree with you. And it leaves the debate to a public hearing on November 17th, when, and the good news about those public hearings is that the planning board can have them ad nauseum. There's not, it's just their vote, but they have to have a public hearing about it. So let's say for some god awful reason, we fail at revising 3 and we need to study it further. We can open a public hearing a month later and continue the conversation. So like you can go at that multiple times with the planning board. But I do think that Clark is an outlier in terms of the 3 versus 8 on that one. And then the last issue is this conversation we had about triggers relative to way, comma, qualified. And this is.
Oh, by the way, I didn't get into my second conversation with Bjorklund. We got cut off because I had something last Thursday, but he was beginning to talk about this qualified way. I didn't get into the details, so I don't know what his objection is, but expect that on Wednesday. He really dislikes the definition of qualified way, and I think where he's coming from it is he thinks we're going beyond state law.
Well, actually, that language is right out of 81L, Tom.
Then that's the answer to him.
I think it's pretty much verbatim. We can do a double check.
Yeah, and by the
But,
way, you know, he says he doesn't own any of the any lots that would be affected by the first article. I am going to guess that he has lots that might be affected by these changes in definitions, so.
Well, he owns lots, so.
He
like,
owns Marion Way where.
There's Marion Way for one.
Yeah. I think it was him, although I don't remember. It was somebody made the comment, and I'm pretty sure it was Borkland, that having standards that are potentially higher than no standards, which is sort of by definition, could require it be more expensive for a developer to put in place or upgrade a way. And the answer is yes.
Yeah, Yeah.
And so if that's his
you're absolutely right.
is spending more money
So,
to,
yes.
Katie, why don't we just offline double check that language, but I'm pretty sure it's verbatim, and Tom, if it isn't, it could be easily, it's just a matter of a couple of words.
Yeah.
well, we can double check it with Carolyn on, I'll just make a note at the 1 o'clock.
And to my mind, if it's out of chapter 81, L or whatever, then,
Right.
It's good enough for the state. It should be good enough for us. End of story.
Correct, I agree.
Okay.
I just want to bring that up, just. so
Yeah, no,
everybody
no,
knew
it's
where-
a
Knew where
very
he was
good
coming
point.
from, so,
Very good point.
and he will go after it Wednesday, so. Yeah.
Jen, do we have further guidance from town or council around how to handle third parties? Are we still sort of going with they have a right to speak in a public hearing scenario?
I think, I know that Amy brought it up in an email, but I planned on talking to Carolyn about that today at 1 to get
Okay.
some guidance on that. Because they've already, particularly if they've going to say the same thing they said last time, Amy does really try to control the repetitive nature of comments.
Well,
And if he's already made his point, he's made his point.
Well, yeah, one of his other objections, by the way, was that he didn't think that was much of a public hearing, and I tried to explain the limitations of Zoom to him, which he fully understands because he's been to Zoom hearings in lots of other towns. but he felt he was cut off. He felt that he didn't get to comment any more times and was shut off. And
Well, he was limited. He was told 3 minutes and not be.
yeah, no, I understand that. And I worry that he's the kind of guy that would make a challenge of that in court.
Well, I guess, but I have one just.
And you know, nobody's tested what Zoom has put all kinds of great limitations on public hearings and everything, but nobody's challenged them yet. But I just be conscious of the fact that it might, and maybe I'll say this to Amy, is that it might just be better not to cut off people rather than to limit them to the 3 minutes.
And I think my gut is there also, Tom. I guess my only, and I just want to fact check this with everybody, his opportunity is a comment now during public comment, because he is not allowed, correct me if I'm wrong, to go to the mic during special town meeting because he's not a citizen. He can sit there with a badge on, but he cannot comment. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know if he's where he votes. He
Well, resident.
He told us that he was a resident of, I think he gave us a
Norwell.
Situate address.
Norwell.
Norwell, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So his
Um,
understanding.
You know what, I don't, Woody, you may remember this. Years ago, there was a lot of hubbub and court challenges over in Hull with non-resident owners of beachfront properties complaining about the beach renourishment program. And I don't know where all of that came out, and maybe Carolyn just asking Jim Lamke, the Hull's Town Council, where all that shook out about the rights of a property. I think Bjorklund has the right as a property owner to speak at these meetings, particularly if his property is going to be affected by a change in zoning.
Yep.
Whether that gives him a right at town meeting is another issue, but Lamke over in Hull would know the answer to that, because that was a huge issue about 10, 15 years ago. Now,
Okay.
DeLisi's a different animal, you know, and I haven't tried to reach out to him and talk to him yet, but I think he needs to, you know, he's perfectly willing capable as an attorney to speak, but he should be disclosing who his clients are. I go to a meeting, you know, I'm representing somebody at a meeting in another town. I say, yeah, I get to speak for them, but I have to disclose who I'm representing.
Right.
Okay.
And the open meeting law is pretty clear about public comment. You can take public comment, but the chair can control it. And if she's going to let Steve speak and let him finish, but she could tell.
He passed, that was his first comment on the phone call. He basically said, what kind of BS of a public hearing was that?
Well, it's Steve Bjorklund. If he didn't get to everything out.
Of course. I take what he says
With a grain of salt. I mean,
I saw where it's coming from, but he's also the kind of person that can make trouble about it. That's all I'm saying.
That's
All right.
fine.
Okay. So I want to, I agree that we need to revisit with Carolyn just our specific tactics as it relates to third parties. And I do want to have clarification whether they have to speak at special town meeting or not. I think that would be helpful perspective for me, because if it is a forever and hold your peace, I guess I'd rather have them give their piece now than at special town meeting, if that's a risk. So as it relates to the trigger of adequate ways and any regulations there that could be subsequently adopted by the planning board in terms of the dimensions or the construction of those adequate ways, we have two examples that we've used to support our thinking on this, that we're not alone in terms of trying to define and regulate adequate access. One was the Plymouth example, which was in bylaw. We discarded that because we didn't want to get into a bylaw. We thought it was more appropriate in regulations. And the second was Wellesley, which handles it all through regulations. I know you spoke more to, Tom, you spoke more to Clark. I mean, this is where I'm struggling with, because the trigger for me is twofold. One is the trigger around A&Rs, which you guys are already statutorily required to think through. But the second trigger, which doesn't have support today, is the building permit and John's request to have these definitional changes made. And so, and that's what's supported in the Wellesley example, is that the trigger is the building permit. So I guess, how have you thought more about how to answer that trigger question from Clark?
Well, to everybody, I shared with Clark the proposed combined regulation with the caveat that, you know, our group hasn't decided to promote that or the two separate regulations. Because one of the things I think we would benefit from bringing Clark into the loop earlier rather than waiting to public hearings for him to make his comments. You know, we got into it where we perceived him as being obstructionist. He perceives us as being, it's our way or the highway, you know, just agree with us. So, you know, part of it was to get Clark. The regulate, you know, as far as the trigger for what are you asking about specifically? What trigger? As to what's going.
So if we're going to add a reference in way, qualified to see applicable regulations of the planning board, his question was, what is the trigger that gives that ties that definition to planning board regulations, or ties it to the planning board reviewing adequacy of the way? I viewed it as a more fundamental question of like, so you define way, qualified. Now, what is the trigger for the planning board to actually discuss that? And we know that that's embedded in the A&R process, but we're trying to address it outside of just the A&R process when it comes up under this issue of what is a buildable lot and whether a building permit should be issued. That's my view.
Okay, all right. So I'm reading from the combined one, only because I'm a bigger advocate for that than the two separate sets of regulations for common driveways and for non-subdivision roads. But there's a section number 5, permitting issues, and it first starts with no zoning special permits or building permits shall issue for a dwelling on a street which does not meet the standards in these regulations. And up above, it's telling you how a common driveway should be built and the limits and its dimensions. And it's telling you how a non-subdivision street should be built. I might, in that, by the way, have to add these new definitions of qualified way and all that, maybe plug those in here. And then it goes on to say that if there's an increase in the number of houses to be served, it shall be brought up to standards and the upgrade would require approval by the special permit of the planning board. And then the next section, I believe, sets out a process for planning board review on a common driveway. Clark has asked me to check into the legality of compelling an upgrade to a road. It does not clearly say that it would just be the new owner that would pay for that upgrade. So that may be an issue we need to clarify. But through Lauren, I've asked Carolyn to weigh in on that.
Okay.
Now, the Wellesley regulation that I just saw that Amy retrieved already sets out a process for upgrading. So I'm going to assume it's legal because it's being done elsewhere. And that will probably, and I think that Wellesley one may need to be integrated into this, but it may not be beautifully done, but in that section 5, it's intended to have a planning board review of some sort, either a special permit or some maybe just lesser form of review as to whether an upgrade is needed or if somebody's not in compliance with the regulations, you know, the dimensional requirements of the access, you know, what they need to do to get it up to snuff. So it's at first putting a hold on anything that doesn't comply with the dimensional requirements. So John won't be issuing anything. The question is, and maybe it's not clearly stated, and I just need to focus a few moments of time to think about it and look at this Wellesley thing, is what is the means of the planning board review for the upgrade?
Yeah.
The whole point of it is to set a standard and to contemplate the situation where more houses are added to using that access, and then that access falls, is out of compliance and deemed inadequate or unsafe.
Correct. It's the Ocean Ledge example where the original cemetery road, before it got renamed to Ocean Ledge, had 2 homes on it from the 1800s. There were another 2 that were added in
Right.
the 60s. So you had 4. Flash forward to when the A&R was done in 2000, and there were 3 or 4 more lots being added. The adequacy of the way doubled, in terms of like what we're facing. So there's an A&R question, because at the time of the A&R, the planning board did have that conversation about adequacy of the way. There's a second conversation that Wellesley tackles, which is what we struggle with, is the A&R may have happened in like 2006.
Right.
But it's a decade later before the building permits are pulled, and there's an opportunity to have that second conversation. And then in some cases, there's not even an A&R that's driving this conversation. There's a question around adequacy of the way of DIAB that has nothing to do with an A&R, because DIAB is being used as an access point. Whether that's legal frontage or not is one question. But the second question is that DIAB only has 2 residences on it currently, one from 68 and the other from, again, the turn of the century. And now we're talking about, going from two homes to 5 homes on what is essentially a driveway. And so
And
these
it's the same issue we're facing on Black Horse Lane, that because of the different A&Rs and development, I think 2 houses may go back to the 30s or the 60s at least. Now we could be facing 6.
Correct. And I guess
Ultimately.
And this is what we're trying to get at in terms of, by looking at the state definition under 81L, having, in the opinion of the planning board, sufficient with suitable grades construction to provide for the needs of vehicular traffic in relation to the present and proposed use of the abutting lots. And so it ties back to the present and proposed use of abutting lots is an issue that the planning board has jurisdiction under as it relates to the subdivision control law. And so this is where, again, I think you were talking about 5B, that's in the regulations. And I absolutely believe that we need Carolyn to weigh in under the regulations. But our battle for Wednesday night is not about the regulations or what's coming. Like, I really want to not go there, but rather just focus on the definitional battle of like, what's the problem? This is following statutory law.
Right.
This is following statutory law. The trigger is the planning board has the ability to review this.
Right.
And maybe I'm
No, you're absolutely right. You're
making
absolutely
it
right.
really simplistic. And I'm happy to have Carolyn poke holes in it, but it's like, I see other communities that are addressing this issue, and it goes back to the land use issue that we kind of dismissed relative to the deletion of 8.3 B and C, but the reality is the incremental homes that are being added, whether they're on non-conforming or not lots, creates an access issue.
Right.
So anyway,
And the focus is, and I try to say this to Clark, is the safety and adequacy, not on whether, too many people the other night were referring, property rights. No, we're not talking about whether you can use the lot and whether the lot is it safe to get there? Is it adequate for emergency vehicles?
Yeah, public safety is the really
Right,
concern.
which is the whole issue behind the state concept of adequacy of a way. It's not about building a house or not. It's about the safety of that road for the use that's intended. We're assuming the intent is going to be a single family house or multiple ones, but that's not the issue.
And ultimately, it's not about stopping the development. It's about recharacterizing the access to that development in a way that is safe. So anyway,
Okay,
I
I just have a quick question that, for the A&R, is there a time limit on exercising the A&R? In other words, you have 3 years to pull your permits.
No,
yeah,
the A
No.
and R is, no, the A and R is just to divide your property. It's got nothing to do with developing it. And a lot of times the A and Rs come qualified that one of the lots being split off is not going to be a buildable lot. So it's just
Okay,
a
so-
division of, it's a
so
division of property.
Is there any place where we could put a time limit as a control mechanism on permits or anything like that?
no, I mean, the
I don't-
A&R process.
A and Rs are governed by state laws, so I don't know. I don't think so, but you could ask Carolyn if a bylaw.
You're muted.
says-
What are you, you're
I don't think
commenting a
so.
lot, but you're muted.
Getting excited. All right, no, I'll calm down here. No, the only statute of limitations on an A&R is that is a 3-year provision, a freeze on current zoning bylaws. If the zoning bylaws in any respect become more stringent, after 3 years, the A&R has to comply with those new bylaws. You can't take the use away. In other words, it can always be used,
Yeah, but they just have to comply.
but they have to comply after 3 years.
And as far as building permits, there's no way to put a sunset on them?
No, building permits have a 2-year
Okay.
or a 3-year, depending.
So
Commercial,
you've got to execute within that period of time.
yeah, I think commercial is 2 and residential is 3, but I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you. That was just.
Yeah, no, and that's also state law. So,
Yeah, okay.
you know,
And, you know,
what?
I hear Clark's concerns more being about the regulations than I do about the definitions. And that's where I'm trying to get him on record on Wednesday night of like, what's your issue specifically with the definition? The definition is going to say, see regulations that don't exist. So if your concern is about 5B on the regulations, then let's have that conversation on November 17th. But if your concern is about the definition, let's talk about it. I just, you know, in terms of like the concern that of the definitions themselves, I think the best argument is what we put forth last week, which is the goal is twofold. One, to make sure that our definitions are as aligned as possible to statutory provisions, or allow us to be able to directly reference relevant case law as it relates to what is considered a buildable lot. And what is considered a buildable lot has been adjudicated by the SGC. And there's kind of 4 parameters that we laid out very clearly, both in the informational summary for the warrant article, but also in the presentation last week. We're not trying to do anything above and beyond what is sort of defined in our judiciary or our state law as it relates to these definitions. So that's kind of the full stop on it. And I'd like to keep on driving the conversation back there. I think, I mean, we know we have 3 votes. I think that Eric Potter, with the deletion of the 3 driveways and addressing some of Clark's concerns in terms of references, is there. And then it's just a matter of, is it enough for Clark? But is there something specific we want to bring to Carolyn above and beyond this discussion around triggers?
I think those seem to be more regulations
Yeah.
than law, than statute.
No, I think you're right. I mean, and it seems like, at least in the case of Wellesley, they have, you know, they obviously undergo this conversation under A&Rs because they statutorily are able to, but they also have this conversation in terms of adequacy of the way relative to new building permits. And so that's, I mean, that's sort of the goal here, is to address the underlying safety and access issue when you're having new homes, new construction put on a private way. The issue that I think Borkland is going to come front and center is that this adds cost to the developer. If they're going to be asked to upgrade the way to
Right.
add that last home, then, you know, I'm a little bit unapologetic that, yeah, I mean, if you're last in and you're creating a safety and access problem for the existing homeowners, then yeah, you're gonna be asked to address it.
I would say that's neutral to the developer. He just passes that on to the purchaser.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, or,
No.
yeah, or impacts his bottom line profit, but, you know, or
Oh,
some.
no, that's just a pass through. If it costs him more, he charges more.
Yeah. So,
I also think, Katie, that we have to, and I don't know how you necessarily bring this up, but we have to be cognizant of the fact that these definitions and so on and so forth, the rights are well established in state case law. And were we to be challenged, it isn't the Steve Bjorklunds who would win. It would be people challenging us were we not to comply with standards or adequacy, this kind of thing, adequate access. We would probably lose those cases. We're not going to lose to developers who are complaining about spending money. It's the others who would say you've approved an unsafe road, or you haven't approved anything here. You know, so
it's the town's defense against abutters who are upset with the building permit being issued. Is that what we're talking about?
well, it could be. They might. Are you talking about upgrading a private way, and it's going to cost all the abutters, some, a homeowners association or something, some money, right?
But
Or not?
I actually think what we were proposing was not that all the abutters, but it was a last in. So whoever.
Okay, I don't know about the law.
Yeah.
That I
No,
don't know.
there is no law that, again, that falls in the regulations as to where we.
Okay.
On that.
I will tell you that one of Clark's concerns is that we are going to go to encouraging more subdivisions being built. With cul-de-sacs and things of that, as opposed to what we have now, which is a lot of common driveways and pork chop lots. And I said-
inadequate ways,
Right,
narrow.
and I said to
Yeah.
him that, yes, we are, I said, we did this typical suburban approach up to the 60s. We changed it to what we have now, where we are definitely looking towards going back to the other of encouraging subdivisions, because it's going to have safer access for property.
But what Clark is confusing, like the issue over Ocean Ledge, Diab, and Black Horse Lane are never going to be subdivisions. The adequacy and the qualified way issue that exists on those is one of, as you double the number of homes on a non-subdivision private way, without addressing construction or dimensions, you create a safety and an access issue. It's not going to change the character of Black Horse Lane in that it's not going to have a cul-de-sac at the end. It's requiring it to be its dimensions and construction and stormwater to address sort of the safety of access for all the residents on Black Horse Lane.
Put the safety first. I mean, lead with the safety.
Yeah.
That overrides everything else.
And again, if we. So this is to me is an issue that the planning board either agrees with, that you've been struggling with Ocean Ledge, Diab, and Black Horse, where you're seeing this issue creep in to how building permits are being addressed or not. I mean, this, for the, anyway, so. I actually think we're really close on this one to getting it right, with the exception of what additional comments we may hear from Borkland on this. But I think what I was going to propose is I'm happy to take some time and go through and create a new version for the 20th, which addresses and puts into text the comments that Clark made. So I'm happy to do that and redline that so that it's in front of the planning board so they can see that we've reflected the
Yep.
comments. And Tom, I'll run that past you to make sure I got it right, but I think that's pretty straightforward. And then it's just a straight up or down vote. And I'm with you, Peter, that we need to get to unanimous in order to really proceed forward.
Yeah, land use, you have to.
Yeah.
All right, I have to leave for my closing shortly. Is there anything else we need to like cover?
I don't think so. I think that was it.
We're not covering the regulations today, correct?
We're not covering the regulations. In fact, Tom, thank you for raising that. I was actually going to propose that we have a dedicated meeting on that.
Yeah, and I just would like the opportunity to look at what Amy retrieved from Wellesley and see if it needs to be integrated into what is written so far.
Yeah.
Should this group be really opining on the regulations? Isn't that the planning board's purview?
It ties into our entire work of looking at the zoning bylaw, and especially since we're proposing moving a lot of things out of the bylaw into regulations. I think it's perfectly fine that we propose the follow-up to the zoning changes we're suggesting.
I'm sort of with Tom on this one in that, no, it is not our work. Will the planning board do it themselves? No. Does there need to be follow-up to the definitional changes we propose? So do we take a crack at it and give them a draft?
I'm just, what I had in my head was that, gee, it'll be pushback that it wasn't invented here, you know, it's somebody trying to tell the
Yeah.
planning board how to do their jobs.
No, but that's,
Really, I mean, you know, this comes in.
we
know,
are
This
essentially.
is what stops the progress.
No, I'll deal with that. But I mean, we are essentially a subcommittee of the planning board because the planning board historically hasn't had the time to do all this deep dive work on the bylaw, which is why it hasn't been changed in 30 years. So.
Okay, I'm okay with that as long as that's a tenant that the planning board has, that
Yeah,
they accept inputs from support boards. I'm not sure that it is.
It's a very important point, Peter. Like I'm not doing this work to subvert the planning board. I'm doing this work to support.
I'm not talking about subvert. I'm just talking about not invented here.
What? Yeah,
Which is,
exactly.
in all of my business career, that you know that was a real wall that you had to jump over.
Yeah. So again, to better phrase it, like I want to be here I want the zoning bylaw working group to be supporting the planning board. And if there's a sense that it's not invented by them, it's going to.
Doesn't matter what we think though, it's how they perceive it.
Yeah, no, I 100%. But at some point we have to, the water is warm. Please come and swim alongside.
And the frog is still alive.
Exactly. All right. So with that, I think we've covered all that we need to. Woody has a homework assignment. I have a homework assignment, and we all have a homework assignment of coming refreshed and enthusiastic to Wednesday night to listen more and get.
God knows I love it. Just a quick one, Katie, if the meeting is over.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to conclude the meeting just quickly, and then Peter, you and I can hang out and talk for a second. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay, because I just want to talk to you about the Wednesday meeting for my committee.
Yes, no worries. So do you
Before
mind, Jen, leaving open the link for just a couple, like 5 minutes for Peter and I?
I'm just gonna make you the host, Katie,
Okay,
and then I can just leave you.
Great.
How am I connecting with you and Carolyn at 1 o'clock?
I'll resend an invite.
She'll send an invite to you.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that now.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
So I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 11:27. Thank you, everyone. A motion to adjourn, second.
Second.
All in favor, aye, Katie Dugan.
Hi, Woody.
Hi, Peter Pescatori.
Great. And then Peter and I are going to talk about a master plan issue. So everyone else is dismissed, and Peter and I get held back for further
We have to
Okay.
stay after school.
See ya.
After school, that's what I was trying to get at. Exactly, Peter.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. All right, I'll
You,
see you at
thank you
1
all.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay,
Yeah.
I think if you want to just hang on a second, let me just check my mail.
Yeah.
I think I've got a approved, hang on just a second.
Yep.
I don't see, okay.
Did
I don't see the response. I sent the agenda into the clerk's office to post,
Okay.
and I don't see their response that they posted it, which
Okay, okay.
is for Wednesday, and they had to post it this, this morning for me to be legal. So I don't see that yet.
Okay.
I try to finesse it. So I'm hoping they'll give me, approval to have the meeting. Otherwise, I guess I'll just have to have an email meeting, I guess, send around the letter and ask people to, send me, I don't know, send me comments and vote,
Yeah, I
one way or
think,
the other. Which gets messy because there's nothing, I can't campaign it, that way very, very effectively.
I don't even know if you can vote via email, can you? I've never done that. I mean, maybe there.
I
maybe
think
there-
so. Yeah, I
Okay.
think so. I think you
Okay.
can do that. You can have I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm gonna do it anyway, so.
Well,
you
You're
know,
going to
it-
speak as chair. Either way, the fallback here is you could speak as
Yeah,
chair.
Right.
But I'd love to have your committe's name in the.
I'd rather have the committee vote rather than just as chair that say that this is, first of all, the stuff I sent you on Friday was everything I could find, actually,
Okay.
so. Because the sidewalks, while we're interested in it, wasn't core to the, it's more the environment itself and, the open space usage and things like that. So it wasn't one of the core directions that the planning process had. Let's put it that way. But we did,
Yeah.
it is, along with, having more recreational opportunities, it's the ability to get there safely, which is sidewalks. And we talk about safe walkways and paths and stuff. So, we're very supportive of it. But that was all I could find. Was that enough?
Yeah, it was. Did you see I drafted a letter. So you have a
I
letter.
didn't, no, I didn't go into my town email, so
I think I did. I sent it to Gmail, but if I didn't,
all right, this morning?
yeah.
Oh, no, I haven't seen that yet.
Okay, let me just do it right now so that I don't get lost later in the day. So you can circulate this to your group because it's
Yeah,
specific-
that's what I want to do, but
Yeah. No, that was
I
done.
don't
Sorry.
know that I have a legal meeting yet.
Yes, exactly. Okay.
I got it in as, so that it was in their email for early this morning, but I don't know if that's going to work.
All right, I just sent you the PDF, and it's 2 pages. It includes what you sent me from open space plus it works out kind of balanced in terms of like, where is the support for sidewalks? There's 2 examples from master plan strategies, and then there's
I mean, there was, in the survey that, I sent you the survey, and
Yep.
in the survey information, people want to have safe sidewalks and more of them. So,
And I actually cut out 2 things from that survey. One was question number 12, which was, I twisted it a little bit, but I don't think it was too untoward. It says, question number 12 was, please rate the following recreational facility types in class it based on adequacy/availability. And the example was pedestrian/biking paths. And it said,
bike paths, we did talk a lot about.
Yeah, and
As
that,
a recreational as well as a transportation issue.
Exactly. And so 75% of citizens said we need more. So I use that as an example.
Yeah, that can extrapolate, that extrapolates into sidewalks,
Yes, exactly.
as far as I'm concerned. Bikeways and sidewalks are one and the same.
That's, I'm glad you agree. And then the other one was.
I don't think the state agrees, but I think we can agree.
This
And I
is
think the
just-
state doesn't want bikes on sidewalks.
Yes. And so the other one was I used 8, which says, if you do not use Cohasset's conservation land or recreation facilities, why not? And select all applied. And the bar graph had a couple interesting, one was lack of parking, which, you know, to me says if you can get there via another mode.
You can use your feet, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or a bike to get there. The other was safety concerns. And again, to me, that was safe passage to these. Might be
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah, narrow roads with no sidewalks are dangerous.
Exactly. And then interestingly, there was 2 responses that said not handicapped. So again, this whole issue around ADA.
AMA is a big issue throughout the recreational
Yeah.
infrastructure.
Yeah.
One of the big projects was we were trying to figure out how to make Wheelwright Park more AMA accessible. It's not right now.
Yeah.
You can't get a wheelchair in anywhere up there.
Yeah. So so I really appreciate your eyes on my writing. So if you want to take a look at what I just sent
Yeah,
you.
and I'll look at it, and you know,
Email me
I'm
back.
betting it'll probably be fine. But if I have any questions, any comments, I'll pop them right back to you.
Yeah, no, and typos, correction appreciated. So there was
Yeah,
this
yeah.
theme around, I had 3 themes. One was how these sidewalks are supported in master plan and open space. The second was this issue we talked about on Friday about there is an issue around doing this now will allow for the bigger connectivity when the 3A north segment is done, and there's support for that in
Yeah.
the master plan that loop was sort of the highest priority. And then last, I actually got dragged in after I hung up with you into an email chain with Chief Quigley and with some of the town folks, with a citizen who has real concerns about bike safety in general. So my closing point was sort of one that.
You know, I was thinking about that this morning, actually,
Yeah.
because when I was out early this morning, I had a dog duty
Yeah.
and coming back, kids, and this has happened to me 5 or 6 times where kids come down Norfolk
Yep.
Street right into the main road,
Yep.
you know, with hardly even looking, kid, you know, just turning down into traffic this morning, kid riding his bike, you know, on the street, coming at the traffic, and then had to cut right in front of me to get where he was trying to go.
Yeah.
And it's bike safety is a huge issue as far. I'm surprised that more kids haven't been injured. My wife commented on this, you know, last week to me that, geez, you see the kids everywhere who aren't, you know, young kids who aren't being attended to, riding bikes everywhere, and they are. They're everywhere. Kids, the people in this town just turn their kids loose, and you know,
Yeah.
like we're safe, and we're not.
Well, yeah, no, it's this dichotomy of we love being a small town where you feel safe letting your kids at a certain age, whether it's, you know, late elementary school, go and
Right.
do as you and I did.
I
which is
see
like-
I see kids 6, 7 years old riding around.
Yeah.
You know, coming home from school with their backpacks and crossing roads everywhere. You
Yeah.
know, so I mean, there's got to be, you know, more, you know, highlighted crosswalks, or
Yep.
you know, we need more bike safety. So I'm glad the you know, public safety folks who initiated that, they contacted you, or
No, so actually, as it turns out, my neighbor who lives on Black Rock Road, he has 3 boys, and he bikes his boys every day to Deer Hill and
okay,
Osgood. And unfortunately, he had a really close call with one of his sons within the last week, where coming out of Redgate Lane, somebody wasn't paying attention. His son was
Yeah.
on the sidewalk and almost clipped his third grader. And so that was the prompt, and Quigley was responding back to the citizens' concern, but he looped me in because he knew that master plan was beginning to undertake some of the complete streets. So it just gave me
Oh,
an
that's good.
opportunity.
I'm good. I'm glad he connected the dots.
Yeah, no, I am too. So it gave me an opportunity to include that in the document too, because, I'll forward you actually Chief Quigley's response, because I think it'll be helpful for your committee at some point, but it was really thoughtful in terms of like, he listed out the 10 or so things that the town has done in terms of safety and traffic calming. And he referenced a number of others that were underway. And I think that, and one of those underway is this broader complete streets, which of those 32 segments, 11 are sidewalks, but the rest are crosswalks or other safety or
Yeah,
traffic.
crosswalks and safety signals of some sort
Yeah,
when somebody needs to cross.
yeah,
I mean, I play golf at Hadley all the time. A friend of mine is a member
Yeah.
there, so I play. But on the road, they have a mechanism, you pull up because you have to cross the road to go to this
Hmm.
half of the course. You
yeah,
have to cross a busy road. And, you push a button and the signs light up, crosswalk.
yeah.
And that's, an expensive solution, but why not? Kids are not replaceable. I'm
Right.
sorry,
Yeah.
So,
No,
if it costs a little money to put up a, blinking sign when kids have to cross the road, then let's do it. Let's have that kind of thing.
and I think if I'm
Enhanced crosswalks.
enhanced crosswalks. So I'm thinking back to my conversation with Jason. Federico, when I met with him on Thursday when we sat down
Yep.
and literally in his GIS tool, like mapped out all of the 32 segments. And one of the ones was actually Wheelwright, that unsignaled crosswalk from where the sidewalks are on Forest to that second entrance, the Forest entrance to Wheelwright. So
Oh, yeah.
like that, where like, I don't do it as much as I used to, but I used to bring my kids up, not necessarily on bikes, but bring them up and we used to cross, but you're on Forest and Forest is a road.
Oh, Forest is, yeah, that's a
And so
true
like,
way.
depending on where you're crossing, you could be, if you're crossing at a low point and, people are coming into it.
Well,
they may not see
yeah,
you until
yeah,
the last
that's, yeah.
second.
And that's that's what you would call an attractive nuisance. I mean, people are gonna want to, that's an entryway to the park and
Yeah.
there should be some sort of signage of some sort to slow down or, pedestrian crossing or whatever.
Yeah. So I will, two things as a follow-up. I'll get your comments if there are any. And then second, I'll forward you this email from Chief Quigley, just so you have the perspective. But when I get the map from Jason, which will hopefully be later this afternoon in terms of the 32 segments, I'll send it along to you so that you can, again, forward it to your group. It's not relevant to the memo of support per se, but it's kind of builds this broader framework around.
It's background, it's
Yeah.
background.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
So, do you have any interest in speaking at the meeting if I have a meeting?
Only if you want me to. If you want me to, I can make let me say that, let me just double check.
Yeah, I don't intend to be very long with this, because I'm gonna try to be at the 7:30, so. Yeah, I just put it in at 6:30 to 7:30, figuring if we spend a half an hour, that would be, because I'll send everything out today.
Well,
And
actually,
everybody will have,
I can't actually, now that I.
yeah,
think
I
of it,
figured
because
you
I'm gonna
would,
be the main speaker at planning board.
right, so you'll be prepping for the 7:30.
Exactly.
All right, I'll carry it, and
Yeah.
I'm sure the letter will be good and they'll understand it.
Yeah,
So,
and I think the more important thing is that, we've already got me on the books to come and talk to the
The-
OSRC on
the
November 9th. So like we can have a deep dive on kind of the important pieces of this.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so plan A is that you get your meeting and I can include you in the memo line. Plan B is you don't get your meeting and you're just going to speak. And what I'll plan on doing is based on what happens, I'll either hold this memo until your vote on Wednesday and send it right afterwards to the Concom so it gets entered into the record, Or if you can't hold a meeting, I'll just let it rip with Master Plan Implementation Committee after my vote tonight, tomorrow. So either
Okay.
works, and then you can. speak.
Okay. All right.
Thank you,
Good.
sir.
We're in good shape.
We are, I think, on a couple different fronts, for sure. We're getting there.
Yeah. All right. Thank you again.
All right.
Thank you for all you do. You really are the foundation. We couldn't get any of this done without the hard work that you do.
Well, honestly, having the.
And you work hard. And you work hard.
Thank you. The chorus definitely helps because it really is important for it not to be. I think that's part of the danger, to be honest, sometimes with Tom, is that if it's just his voice, people view it in a certain way. So that, I mean, honestly, my genesis for asking the question, my genesis for asking the question just between you and me was like, I recognize that sometimes having a second voice step forward is helpful in opening people's minds. And I didn't want my voice to be one that people, when they hear me on Wednesday this week, are like, oh God, is that lady again?
I'm very comfortable presenting. In corporate life,
Yeah.
in front of boards, seems like my entire life.
Yeah.
But I'm just not, I don't have the depth of the bylaw references and everything on the tip of my tongue. I can't quote all the things, the nuances so I'm hesitant to be the prime speaker.
To be the
I'm
voice.
not shy about speaking, but I just don't think I'm deep enough,
Yeah.
because I came into this bylaw with never having really even,
We roped you in.
got
and
into it in a big, in a deep way. So,
Yeah. No, that's fine. And
I'm trying to contribute, but I'm not as well versed as you and Woody and Tom are.
yeah. Well, I think ultimately, it makes your voice just valuable to chime in as kind of as another citizen, but also a citizen who's active on a committee.
I hope the process, I live in process, I'm a very big process person. So, I hope the comments on process are valuable. That's where I think I can make a contribution.
No, and absolutely. And I really appreciate your comment around unanimous because I know that Tom sometimes
Without
feels like
question.
we need them all. And I'm like, we need them all, Tom. We need all five.
Land use, if you don't have a strong planning board recommendation, it's not good. It won't work.
There's no way
Just
we'll
won't
make
work.
it through advisory. You know that.
No. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, what are the two people who didn't agree? Well, why didn't you agree? That's the question.
That's the only.
You'll be on the merry-go-round again, round and round we go.
Exactly. All right. Well, good. Well, thank you. And we'll work this little memo. And again, I think the Concom is going to get to the right decision, but I would feel remiss if for some reason they decide not to approve a variance that we haven't sort of voiced the broader perspective.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah,
Awesome.
I think we'll do all right.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Thank
Talk to
you.
soon.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.